Testing. Nice. Hey everybody, what's going on? Spire Kid here, and today it's a live stream that is a little bit special. I haven't really done something like this before. Basically it's going to be special coverage of the chaos that's happening across the United States because of the death of George Floyd, a unarmed black man that was murdered by police by having their knee being put on his neck and dying of asphyxiation. This is getting really serious so far. They've got the military at the White House, protests are still happening, and there are fears that there will be more riots and chaos throughout the night again. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit as we go along here.
We need something else. We need to do something to try and get this under control.
Yeah, this is a really unprecedented situation at the moment right now. Nothing like this, to this magnitude of protest, has ever happened in decades. Some people have been comparing it to ever since Rodney King was killed, and those riots that followed since then. And unfortunately, it all has to do with police brutality, how black people feel in the United States, how they feel that they're being unjustly treated by police, how they're being killed for no reason. And plus you've got the coronavirus pandemic, which has impacted so many people across the US, especially hard in the US, due to the US government's incompetence on trying to keep this virus down. And yeah, this is what's also come down to. Not to mention unemployment, which is halfly part of the coronavirus pandemic, but also to other issues such as economic inequality way before the pandemic. 20% unemployment, people are hungry, they're trying to find places to stay, and they're sick and tired of it. They're not being listened to, and this is why people are protesting, looting, violence. They have nothing else to do to make themselves heard. No human should be going under that. It's just a terrible situation. This is audio from CNN, by the way, and I'll be putting up a live stream just up here at the different protests.
Today, after the autopsy report, the independent autopsy report came out, then they said, when is this going to stop? Going to stop when the rest of the officers are arrested? When is this going to stop? I don't have an answer, and I'm not sure it's going to stop when the rest of the officers are arrested, because there are so many unanswered questions for protesters. There are so many unanswered questions for Americans, for people for the unheard. And so I don't know when it's going to stop or if it's going to be soon. But I will tell you, it's going to be interesting to watch and unfold on our city streets that I haven't seen, this in quite some time.
Yeah, it's a serious situation indeed. On standby, Alex Markworth is over near the White House, Lafayette Park, right across the street. These are uniformed Secret Service police.
Yeah, it's just a terrible situation. Ever since Donald Trump came into office, things have degraded down to this.
Uniformed Secret Service police is the White House and Pennsylvania Avenue. Alex, set the scene what we're seeing right now. And just a little while ago, we saw trucks carrying military personnel onto the grounds, the actual grounds of the White House.
Yeah, well, the last time
Apologies for that. So I gotta reload this. Yeah, it's so sad to watch this. I live in Canada. Of course, we have problems with racist injustice in this country, but the US has really got it beat so far. It's kind of sad.
Look, we were talking about the variety, the huge different types of forces that have Secret Service right there in the middle of Lafayette Park. Wolf, we have to remember, we have to emphasize over and over again that this is no normal standoff between
protesters and police. This is right in front of the White House. Why you are seeing such a significant amount of fire.
A very serious situation.
That is why you are seeing
Yeah, go ahead.
a significant amount of firepower. But I want Peter Morris to turn back towards me, Wolf, because it is in stark contrast, frankly, to the mood of this protest. There is no doubt that over the past few nights, there has been violence and destruction in this city. But this is a wholly peaceful protest. Just moments ago, we saw people kneeling down, saying, hands up, don't shoot. Now you can hear them chanting, Black Lives Matter. That we have been here, Wolf. We have not seen any instance of violence. We have not seen the protesters throwing anything towards the police. So, obviously, there is a possibility things can change. These protests can evolve, certainly when it gets into the later hours. But when we talk about this balance of protesters versus agitators, those who want to come out for the right reasons and to have their message be heard versus those who want to come out and cause destruction, this is right now a very peaceful protest coming out to have their voices heard in the wake of the death of George Floyd. But you are now seeing this increased police presence, increased law enforcement presence right here in front of the White House.
All right, stand by, Alex, because we're getting some breaking news coming into the situation room right now. An official statement from the medical examiner's office in Hennepin County, Minnesota, that's for Minneapolis, is they just released an official report that says that George Floyd's death was a homicide resulting from being restrained. The statement that says that the cause
That's what happened.
Is a cardiopulmonary arrest complicating law enforcement subdual, restraint, and neck compression. Further as the Floyd died from experience of cardiopulmonary arrest while being restrained by law enforcement officers. Laura Coates is with us, our legal analyst. She's just back here in Washington from Minneapolis. That's her hometown. What do you make of this official county medical examiner's report, Laura?
Well, it seems to largely be in line with what we all thought happened on the scene. But remember, this is what has to be done as part of the formal process of an investigation. It can't be just laypersons looking at a scene and establishing a particular cause of death. Now, I want to be very clear. When medical examiners write these reports, they actually have a disclaimer as part of them. They are not saying anything about liability on the civil side or talking about somebody in the conviction way, as in this is the person who is convicted or should be convicted. They don't make an actual assessment about the legal conclusions. What they are saying is that this was not an instance where there was underlying conditions that overrode what the officers did. They weren't simply, contributing factors that accelerated. It was actually making a connection, she's making a connection between the officer's conduct, the compression, meaning the officer kneeling on the neck, and also, remember, we have video footage, Wolf, of other officers who are also placing their bodies on Mr. George Floyd's body. So there may be some contributory ideas here about what compression they did that could have also led to the heart attack, essentially, and the pulmonary arrest. And what you're seeing here is laying out what the prosecutors will look at and also what the defense is going to try to attack and say, hold on a second, is there any reason to believe that your findings should have been inconclusive? Are you jumping to legal conclusions? Are you making
what is
things
Corona?
that you otherwise not be qualified to do?
Hello, NC Logical. What are you? How are ya? Welcome to the stream. Everyone's heard of it by now, the coronavirus.
Is there
a deadly disease that can cause a lot of harm to the elderly around the world and whatnot, basically change everyone's lives.
Combining all the factors and the video evidence, this case is getting stronger in favor of the murder charges. And one last point here, Wolf, when a medical examiner says homicide, that is, I know for people who are watching saying, aha, they're making those conclusions about murder, a homicide really is...
And another thing too, Trump is supposed to be speaking like in an hour or so, and if he says the wrong thing, that, like, encouraging more violence and whatever, suppression and whatever, that's really going to escalate things pretty quickly, because he's really not helping things by having so many people at the White House.
Damn.
With us, Sanjay, you've gone through this a little bit. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, just as Laura was saying, they're now saying that the manner of death, homicide, the cause of death cardiopulmonary arrest, complicated because of the restraints, subdual restraints. So by being subdued, the restraints and the neck compression was what led to that. So from a medical standpoint, it sounds like what they're saying here, and again, there will be a full report that came out. This is a bit of a summary here, basically saying that due to inadequate oxygenation of the blood, the organs, in this case the heart, was not getting enough oxygenated blood, and that led to a cardiac arrest, a cardiopulmonary arrest. So it's again, a short summary here, but it's pretty clear, and I think it fits with what we also heard earlier today from that independent medical exam, also being called a homicide, saying in that case because of pressure on the neck leading to inadequate oxygenation, inadequate blood flow. In the independent medical report, they also said it was due to pressure on the neck and pressure on the back. Two sources of pressure, they said, led to Mr. Floyd's death. But both, ultimately it's the heart that stops pumping that leads to, that is the cause of death. That's what they're saying here in this medical report, but they're clearly saying it was a homicide and it was due to this pressure on the neck.
Very serious development. We're going to continue to follow this. The official Hennepin County Medical Examiner's report calling it a homicide now of George Floyd, 46 years old, and that has resulted in all of us seeing that really dramatic and awful video, some 9 minutes, including almost 3 minutes after he stopped moving at all, and clearly he had been restrained to a dangerous and deadly.
Are you living under a frock?
Stand by. We've been showing our live pictures coming in. You see Washington,
What's a frock?
D.C. There's a standoff at the Lafayette.
No, I am
right
not.
across the street from the White House. U.S. military personnel already have been brought in trucks onto the White House grounds. These are U.S. military police. You can see them there at Lafayette Park off of Pennsylvania Avenue in New York. Crowds are gathering there. We saw crowds gathering in Philadelphia, crowds gathering in Atlanta, other major cities.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Staying on top of all of these developments, hoping that all these protests, all these demonstrations remain peaceful. Obviously, a lot of angry people there, and don't deteriorate in the face of tension with the police and other law enforcement authorities and get ugly and violent as they have over these past several days here in the United States. Let's get some reaction, some analysis from the St. Paul, Minnesota Police Chief, Todd Extel. Chief, thank you so much for joining us. As you see all these dramatic images of the protests around the country, and as you know, 1 week ago, George Floyd died under the knee of a Minneapolis.
Let's go to Reddit, see what kind of stuff is on here.
What you're seeing, first of all, in your city, and what are you preparing?
There's been a lot of videos I've been seeing of police brutality across the states ever since this began.
Our heart breaks.
It's like a spike.
Our heart absolutely breaks for the Floyd family. Our community is hurting. Our police officers are hurting. It's just really a strange, unusual, historic time in policing in America. This is a pivotal moment, and we can take two paths, and I just really believe that all the police
in public freakout, the cop literally put that man's hand on the stick just so he could have a reason to beat him up. But the title's misleading, let me see. I won't show anything misleading unless it's...
What do you think about the protests?
Medical examiner, Hennepin County is the county where Minneapolis is.
It's unprecedented.
Protests.
Yeah, it's unprecedented, that's what I'll say, but I'm not really surprised. I mean, so many black people in the United States have been treated so unfairly. Systemic racism. People have been killed just because of their skin color by police. They're getting harassed so much more than white men, and people are just really, really tired of the racism down in the States. And plus, when you have the coronavirus pandemic adding up to the frustrations and whatever, and with Donald Trump and his infinite wisdom, just inflaming things, not telling people to calm down and go for unity or whatever, you know, this shit happens. It's even on his doorstep, and yet he's still fanning the flames. Like, is he really asking for it?
when you see misconduct going on.
I don't condone violence at all, but I'm not surprised this is happening.
Those officers on the scene should have known. They should have had the courage.
Like, I wish people
stand
would
up
just go for peaceful
and
protests, but I'm not surprised
protect
this is happening.
somebody
I'm not going to be
who is
ignorant
about to
and
take their last breath.
say,
And
say,
police officers
oh, why is this
need
happening? Because I know what's
to
happening.
intervene in those situations. And
People
it's
are tired.
absolutely preventable.
Like,
Chief Aaron
people-
Donald, Minneapolis Police Chief,
Like, people, all they've been doing has been talking, and nothing's been changing, even under President Obama, especially not under Trump. Like, you
Yeah,
can't
but they
do
won't
shit.
listen to him.
Yeah, and
police officers throughout this country understand that. We have to really understand.
It's just a
that
shit show.
In this country, we have 1 million police officers
here?
who answer 500 million plus police calls per year. A predominant number of them, a great majority of our police officers serve with dignity, respect,
this
honor, and pride. And our hearts break for what's happening right now. And we're going to do everything we can to facilitate First Amendment activity throughout our city and also keep our city safe.
And before I let you go, Chief, what are you bracing for tonight?
Well, we have active protests throughout our city right now. We have wonderful relationships with 95, 98% of our protest community, people who are out grieving, speaking their minds, speaking up, and helping.
Trump tries his best.
oh no, he doesn't even know what he's doing. He's a childish pedophile.
I believe we're in for a good night in St. Paul. That's my greatest hope.
I mean, Anonymous came out with some
I'm with you.
leaked
Obviously,
court documents that just
St.
prove
Paul,
that.
Minnesota Police Chief. Good luck tonight.
Like dozens of cases of
Thank you so much for
hush
joining
money paid for children that he has continuously
I wanna go,
raped.
to Minneapolis right now and see
And I know
what's
that
going on.
hasn't been
There,
completely
others who I think
been
is gonna
confirmed by
move across the street from the White House
news
to
sources
stand
and
up,
whatever, but
to
Anonymous,
protesters, and
the
their
Twitter
Secret
account where it
Service
came from, a
personnel,
lot of
military
stuff
police,
that has been
among
credible has
others,
come out
are
from
standing
them.
there. We also, just a little while ago, pretty extraordinary moment, U.S. military personnel being driven in several trucks onto the actual grounds of the White House. We're watching this closely. We're watching New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta. Let's go to Minneapolis.
Fuck Trump.
And see what's going on there. As we're watching, what's going on in Minneapolis. Before we go there, I want to see. You see, these are U.S. military police. And hold on for a moment.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
You gotta hold on for a moment because we see the police moving closer for some reason. Alex Marquardt, you're there for us. Tell us what's going on. Alex, I don't know if you can hear me. Alex Marquardt is there in Lafayette Park. And if you could tell us why the police are now getting closer and closer to the protesters.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now.
All right. Well, there's been a significant ramping up of the police presence, of the law enforcement presence right there
Up
in
the
Lafayette
Anonymous.
Park. And what we see the last few moments is really the D.C. National Guard moving in. They have in the past few days been supporting the park police in this park, which, as you know, Wolf, is federal land. So these are federal authorities that have taken over this park to secure it right in front of the White House. So what we have right here is United States Secret Service in blue, the D.C. National Guard in camouflage, and they have been, you've got that in the front row, and then more D.C. National Guard behind them. Now, I do not know why they have felt the need to bring more forces in. It is not as if the protesters here have gotten any more violent. There hasn't been anything thrown in the hours that I've been here. It has been an entirely peaceful protest. The only thing that I can think of, Wolf, is that in under an hour's time, there will be a curfew. The mayor of D.C. announced today that there will be 2 days of a 7 p.m. curfew.
Let me show you a picture from Minneapolis. This is trending in the subreddit Urban Hill. And it's a picture of Minneapolis here.
And so what we saw last night was a real uptick in violence in the later hours. So even if protests like this,
which is a sad sight to see, ain't it?
they have in the last few days given way to much more violent protests. That, in part, according to the mayor of D.C., is Donald Trump's fault. She said that the words that we have heard from him have all but incited the violence that we have seen. We have heard from the president talking about possibly unleashing vicious dogs and ominous weapons if protesters were to breach the fence over there by the White House. So we have seen a real anger by the mayor of D.C. directed at the president, who said that his comments were gross and are certainly not doing any favors. But at the same time, Wolf, as we've been discussing, there is a huge amount of law enforcement presence in this city. I have counted at least 10 different agencies or bodies that have now come together to work with the city and the federal government to keep the peace here. So again, there is a curfew going into effect in under an hour's time. When you look at this crowd, you hear this crowd, there's little indication that they plan to leave by 7 o'clock. So that remains very much to be seen, whether they will disperse.
6:08 p.m. Eastern there.
We have here in the nation's capital.
And I just want to remind our viewers where you are, Alex. You're at Lafayette Park, right across Pennsylvania Avenue from the White House.
Yo.
But on the other side,
Would you join in the
is a
protests?
really historic church, historic
Hello,
Hotel,
Tis. How are ya? Welcome to the stream. Would I join? Probably, but not probably in the violent protests. I don't want to get myself hurt. And actually, I don't know, because with the coronavirus pandemic, in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, I don't know if...
From here, but I can definitely explain how it went down. You're absolutely right. Well, I'm gonna ask Peter Morris.
I'm not sure if I want to risk myself getting the virus, but at the same time, I would really want to show my support, you know? What about you guys?
It's famous because it is so close to the White House, because so many presidents
here's some video of some looting that turned into instant karma for some people here.
Last night, a huge fire was set on 8th Street in the direction that the camera is pointing, as well as a fire that was set in a basement room in that church. And then just a block north, in the large building of the AFL-CIO, which of course is the famous Federation of Labor Unions, there was a large fire set by arsonists in the lobby. And as a result, a number of these buildings, including AFL-CIO, including St. John Church, including the Hay Adams Hotel, which is right behind us, right behind my cameraman, right in front of me.
I live in England.
Boarded up.
Alex, hold on for a moment.
I know there's been protests in
Don't
London.
live in United Shithole.
We see more police and military personnel going into that area. Clearly, there's a serious standoff between the protesters and the police.
All the soldiers are coming out of the White House fence. Looks like they're...
personnel, police as well. We've just been told that the president will make a statement in the Rose Garden at 6:15. That's scheduled for 5 minutes from now. You're looking at live pictures coming in from the Rose Garden. The president will walk
Mikal
there.
and Thick know each other.
The teleprompters are already set up. So he will be reading a statement. We'll see if he ad-libs as well, but he'll be reading clearly what's going to be a carefully written statement. Reporters are already there on the scene to hear what the president has to say. So we will have live coverage
I wasn't showing the picture, I realized.
President Trump getting ready to make a statement. He'll walk out of the Oval Office, walk down that red carpet, and go to the
I don't know you.
There and read a statement. You see teleprompters already established. We'll see what he has to say. We'll have coverage of that. And once again, you see the attorney. There's the Attorney General Bill Barr over at the White House. I don't know if he's sticking around
the protesters.
Leaving, but you can see him with his security personnel walking behind the police who have gathered at Lafayette Park in this standoff with protesters who have gathered as well. That was Bill Barr, clearly right there. There you see him, right there. Maybe he just wants to see what's going on, but you see him with his security and his aides standing right there behind the police lines at Lafayette Park. I wonder if he's going to walk back to the White House and see what and be there when the president makes his statement. That's going to be in a few moments. But right now, he's very close to where the action is at Lafayette Park, right across the street from the White House on Pennsylvania.
You better not say anything stupid. It's going to make matters worse.
Unfolding right now. I have no idea why Bill Barr decided to go there. He clearly may have just wanted to see the demonstrators, see the police on the scene, get a first-hand account. Looks like he's walking back now, away from the police lines at Lafayette Park, and heading back towards the White House.
I'm a very
Once
fat
again,
wanker. Suck your mum.
The United States militarily, he's going to be making a statement. You know, Don Lennon, all of us are anxious to hear what the President of the United States has to say in the face of this angry situation that has unfolded not only in Washington or New York or Philadelphia or Atlanta or Chicago or Los Angeles, but indeed in cities all over.
I'm Stephen Hawkins.
Right, you're right. And I think anything short of We hear you, Wolf. We empathize with you. I want to help. I am on your side. I think we'll fall flat. I think if he comes with a message of bringing the military...
Hello, East, how are ya?
2011 riots in UK were way worse.
I don't think it will help.
Oh, yeah?
Sexy
yes,
M8.
There should be law and order in this country. Yes, people should follow the rules.
The 2011 riots in the UK.
Businesses. There should not be destruction of property. But it's all
Up next, here's a video of the moment a line of U.S. security forces act as a firing squad to shoot a small young woman holding an anti-street execution sign. The post says, "They don't care if you're peaceful, spread the video, please."
They're looking for someone not to be racist, not to be bigoted, not to both sides this issue, not to say there are very fine people on both sides of that sentiment. That is not what America needs right now. That is not what these groups of people who are out there, not what they want at this particular time. They want their voices to be heard. They have tried to protest peacefully. They have tried to get their points across in a number of protests that have led up to this, including Mike Brown, including Freddie Gray, including
Not good THA.
including others.
My nan scrans on bats.
Within the marches that happened after this president was inaugurated, they have tried to have their voices heard, including kneeling at a football game, only for the time that it takes to perform the national anthem. That has not been heard.
Boy,
it
calm
has
down.
fallen on deaf ears. So anything beyond, I hear you, I want to work with you, I'm going to listen to you, I understand the mistakes of the past, we're going to correct that, that is going to fall on deaf ears.
Well, we'll see what the president has to say. We're told momentarily he'll walk to the microphone in the Rose Garden and make a statement. We saw the teleprompters already set up there. Don, stand by. Van Jones is with us as well. And Van, you have a unique perspective on what the president might be saying, because you actually worked with him and his aides and Jared Kushner on criminal justice reform. That was, a year or two ago, and you succeeded in a bipartisan effort. What would you like to hear from the president?
Look, I think there is a way out of this. And it's three things. One, he's done the right thing in having the Department of Justice and the FBI leading forward on the ground there. That's very, very good. You need arrest, though. Clearly,
why they shot her?
Laws were broken.
I don't know. There's been numerous videos coming out throughout the United States of police brutality like that.
Bipartisan federal legislation on police reform.
Just numerous. I've shared several in one day on my Facebook.
Police reform. If he says that he wants the doors open for that, he wants to bring Democrats and Republicans together for that. That would be very, very welcome. And then lastly, these communities between the shutdown of the economy, which I support.
Oh, this is interesting. The PlayStation 5 event has been postponed. This is what they say here.
Has been destroyed in a lot of these communities. If he says anything about lending a helping hand to some of these businesses, it's one thing to attack the people who burn the businesses. It's something else to reach out and help the people.
Yeah, this is what they say. We have decided to postpone the PlayStation 5 event scheduled for June 4th. While we understand gamers worldwide are excited to see PS5 games, we do not feel that right now is a time for a celebration, and for now, we want to stand back and allow more important voices to be heard. So that means, due to the chaos in the United States, that Sony has decided to postpone the PlayStation 5 event, and I'm not really surprised.
Right behind the U.S. military police, the Secret Service personnel, uniformed Secret Service police. There is the Attorney General of the United States standing there, simply watching what's going on. That's Bill Barr, the Attorney General. He's not wearing a tie. He's got his hands in his pocket, and he's just looking to see what's going on. What's your appreciation?
What are you doing?
Why he came to do, basically, undertake an eyewitness account of this standoff between the demonstrators and the police.
It's bizarre.
No shit.
Demonstration, and frankly, at the highest levels of government, to see the level of pain, to see the level of outrage, to see how disgusted people are with this. Don Lemon hit it on the head over and over and over again. We are tired.
I just think they should go home, flick the kettle on, and just stop.
Many funerals. We're
Oh,
tired
that's not
of
gonna
it.
happen.
And we're tired of the lip service.
That's not
We're
gonna happen
tired
for
of the
sure.
kumbaya. We want this to stop. We want to change the rules and the laws so that police have some disincentive to keep doing
UK
this.
police
If
are
you
not
keep getting
perfect,
away
but
with
us
it, you
police
gotta
are
keep
way
doing
too
it.
heavy-handed.
So something's gotta change. So I think it's not a bad thing to have the Attorney General. He is the top cop to go and see. Maybe he's went out there to just see how the police were handling it. But maybe just the pure raw energy.
In the politics subreddit, there's a headline that says, Bunker Boy, Trump mocked for hiding from protesters at the White House.
This could get out of hand, Wolf. These disturbances right now are minor compared to 1992 with Rodney King, when you had American cities on fire. 1968, American cities on fire. We are on a pathway right now, not to riots, but to civil unrest, where you have 5, 6, 7 cities on fire. I hope the top cop, the Attorney General, is out there and does his own math. If this starts to happen, if we get one more videotape, Wolf, one more videotape of some brutal, horrific murder or beating, this country could go over the edge. So I'm glad that he's out there.
There's going to be one soon, like, for sure. Well, not soon, but sometime.
It's a good thing he's out there.
Yeah, there's Bill Barr. He's standing there surrounded by some of his aides and security personnel. He's right behind the military police, the Secret Service personnel.
Here's one trending pictures. This is actually a picture I've seen a long time ago here.
This face-off with the protesters who are only a few feet away. And
Donald Trump is both taken photo taken in LA.
Last night
Yep.
deteriorated relatively quickly. There were fires. There was a very, very angry reaction. Let's hope that doesn't happen again tonight. But you can see right behind the police.
In here?
Hold on one second, Don. You can see right behind the police. You can see the Attorney General. He's in charge, so he's sort of like a general overseeing his troops who have gathered on the scene. I guess, Don, that's the only analysis I can think. He just wants to see his troops in action. Go ahead, Don.
No, did you took the sound, and I wanted to say.
I know it's wrong whole hat they've done, but they're only going cry about what they've done to where they live.
Very generous, and I'll allow that. But I think there is one. Bill Barr has a certain degree of anonymity that Donald Trump doesn't have. Obviously, many of these people, they can't see him, and he's, we have the cameras trained on him, so he is hiding in plain sight. And number two, I think that this is probably a photo op, and he knows that the media is going to have the cameras trained on him, and I think this is a law and order sort of play for the American people who don't happen to be in Washington at this point. But yes, it looks very militaristic to me. A general overseeing his troops at this point. Bill Barr was not out there on Friday when there were protesters who were going back and forth with the Secret Service. Bill Barr wasn't out there on Saturday when they were going back and forth with police. On Sunday and on Monday now that the National Guard is there and members of the military are there, and he is well protected. And the president is going to come out, and the Secret Service, more Secret Service out there, and the Washington, D.C. police. He shows up when the president is coming.
You like feet question mark.
Media statement and to give the image of law and order. So I think that we have to be, as members of the media and as Americans, we need to be more savvy about how this White House operates when it comes to dealing with the media. They're very savvy at putting on a reality show for obvious reasons. Putting on a show, looking a certain way. They are playing, they're making at this point, let's see what he has to say. Hopefully he says something that will unite the country instead of divide. But at this point, it looks that they're making a law and order play for the Trump voter and for his constituency. And this has probably more to do with November than it does with winning the hearts and uniting America.
We just got a tweet down from the president. It's a short tweet. He says, I will be delivering brief remarks from the Rose Garden at 6:30 p.m. Eastern to update on the federal response. That's what, about 8 minutes or so from now. We will see Bill Barr. It looks like he's getting ready to leave Lafayette Park across the street from the White House.
Everybody Google General Patton. before that happens.
Yeah, I guess he's seen enough of the military police and the other police who have gathered there. They're very, very close to the protesters who are on the scene.
Another headline from Technology Separated. K-pop fans spam Dallas police snitch app with videos and memes to support protesters.
For this Rose Garden news conference may just be a statement from the president coming up at 6:30, and just a few moments from now he tweeted that this is going to be happening.
And people don't like what other people say, but think about how they treat their president.
Obviously, we've seen some pretty stunning sights over here at the White House over the last hour or so. We saw about 8 military vehicles, large military vehicles, rumble through the White House complex, carrying U.S. troops over to Pennsylvania Avenue to help bolster some of the protective forces that are in place.
Think about how they treat their president? What do you mean?
Unrest. One of the things that we know that the president may talk about, because press secretary talked about this earlier today, Kayleigh McEnany told reporters that the president is considering, or it's being considered inside the White House, the use of the
This from
Insurrection
PlayStation
Act,
once again.
which allows the president, allows the U.S. government to deploy.
They say, we denounce
US
systematic
military
racism and
troops to
violence
help,
against the black
quell
community.
a
We will
disturbance.
continue to work towards a
Obviously,
future
this is a
marked
very
by
old law.
empathy
There's
and
gonna be a lot of
inclusion,
legal
and stand
actors
with
who
our
will
black
argue
creators,
over whether or not
black
this is
creators,
appropriate.
players,
But the
employees,
sight of
families.
What's your opinion on Trump?
Rolling through the White House
Oh,
complex
he's
in a situation like
a
this
baby.
is just highly
Baby in chief.
irregular and is obviously going to cause a lot of
rapist,
concern for people
racist,
around the country
sexist.
and I guess around the world. As the United States is looked upon as a beacon of democracy, it isn't every day. It's very rare to see military vehicles rolling through the White House complex. Now, we also saw the Attorney General
And easily the worst president in America's
outside
history.
the White House, inspecting the situation going on in Lafayette
Agreed.
Park. There have been discussions inside the administration about deploying multiple agencies, sending their protective units over to Lafayette Park to make sure this place does not get out of control. As we saw last night, fires were set at multiple places around the White House, inside St. John's Episcopal Church, the historic
Crowd
church
outside the White House is huge.
worshipped at by every president since James Madison. There are other installations around the White House, including the AFL-CIO that was had its lobby torched briefly before that fire was brought under control. And so the president is stepping into the situation to potentially, we think, to deliver a message of law and order. He hasn't been in much of a mood for issuing words of calm. He didn't do that on the phone earlier today with the nation's governors when he was accusing them of being weak and saying that they need to dominate the streets, asking these governors why they aren't using National Guard troops and so on. And so he has been kind of laying down this marker that he's ready to get tough. At one point,
I have no idea how he is in power.
Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton.
Propaganda, pandering to
101st Airborne Division of the U.S. Army,
stupid people who don't seem to vote the right way.
To quell the unrest here in Washington and around the country. So
here's a picture on Pix.
Looks like a swarm.
Never really seen before in my lifetime.
Says Christ and racism don't mix. You can't say I love God and hate His creation.
I will tell you, Wolf, there has been debate. My colleagues and I in the CNN White House team have been reporting on this all day long. There's been debate inside the president's team of advisors as to whether or not he should talk about any of this.
Unpopular opinion, I like him.
Potential he could make matters worse. We saw last week when he tweeted about looters being shot. That obviously helped inflame the situation. There's just no way around that. And the potential is there once again, Wolf, for the president.
The last thing you want to do in riots and whatnot is to inflame by threatening to shoot them.
And inflame things further. And that's what
people are not going to take that line down. I mean, like...
There was a conference call we had with the nation's governors earlier in the day today, Jim, that apparently got at times pretty ugly. We're told that the president was delivering very stark warnings to them to get tough, otherwise you're going to lose. And some of them were responding, including Illinois Governor Pritzker.
Call me what you want.
The president should not be saying these kinds of things.
That's right. Governor Pritzker from Illinois was telling the president on this conference call that your rhetoric is not helping the situation, it's hurting the situation, and that the president should be displaying a style of leadership that brings calm to the country. And the president responded to that saying, I don't like your rhetoric either, and you didn't do very well dealing with the coronavirus.
Here's something from
so he's in a very feisty,
Resist here.
combative mood.
Trump hitting the bunker during Friday's protests. Let's review Trump's violent racism, a full-page ad hoping to lynch the Central Park 5, birtherism, very fine people, telling congresswomen to go back to where they came from, and now, when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Contrast here. The president's talking tough, he's tweeting tough, he's saying all of these things on this conference call with these governors, and yet on Friday night he was in the bunker in the Emergency Operations Center of the White House, taking cover when there were protests going on in the streets of Washington. Not exactly a Rambo-style move. And so the question is going to be asked, you know, why is the president tweeting one thing and saying one thing and then behaving in a very different fashion when the chips are down?
Stand by, because I know momentarily the president's scheduled to walk out of the Oval Office and head over to the microphone in the Rose Garden and make what he's describing as a brief statement. I don't know if we'll answer reporters' questions in the process, but we've been making a brief statement. And now all of a sudden we see the military police getting closer and closer to the demonstrators. Alex Mark is there on the scene for us. You see the demonstrators, large numbers, they're raising their hands, and all of a sudden they're
The police are right at the protesters on the other side of a fence.
They've got their shields, their batons, and they're getting closer and closer. Alex, you're very close to that scene right now, aren't you?
Yeah, well, we are right here, right in front of them. It is unclear why they have decided they have felt the need to come right up to the barrier. This is the closest they have been to the protesters in the last few hours. Now, it is most likely because the president is about to speak, and once this crowd finds out that the president is
additional 600 to 800 National Guard members from 5 states requested for Washington, D.C.
Likely set off another ripple of anger
so idiotic.
Traffic. Yes, well, what you were looking at here is D.C. National Guard, as well as Secret Service, all with their riot gear, who have marched right up to these barricades where these protesters are on the northern edge of Lafayette Square Park. The protesters are putting up their hands, many of them saying, "Hands up, don't shoot." Well, there is a long list of law enforcement agencies who have come here to quell these protests, or out in the streets to quell these protests, I should say, in the streets of Washington, D.C., and we have just learned that an additional 600 to 800 National Guard members from 5 other states have been requested for Washington, D.C. So that, well, just to put that in context, that's over 10 different law enforcement bodies that are now active in D.C. to keep control of these protests, to make sure that they don't get out of hand, as we have seen the last few nights. Now, earlier today, Wolf, we learned that some 200 to 250 active duty Army soldiers would be coming up from North Carolina to join the law enforcement efforts here in Washington. As we've been saying, well, these protests until now have been entirely calm.
This trending world news. British photographer arrested at U.S. protest in, quote, affront to press freedom,
We
quote.
have not seen the protesters respond in any sort of way by throwing any sort of projectiles, by throwing any sort of rocks or fireworks like we saw last night. So the protesters, for the most part, have their hands in the air, many of them chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot," and holding up their signs. But, Wolf, there is also a fear of escalation, not just because these forces have come up to confront them, but because we've seen a number of them putting on their gas masks, which would be an indication that they are about to start firing tear gas. We have our gas masks at the ready as well. This is something that we saw last night and in the course of the past few days. So, Wolf, as we get ready to hear the president speak, the temperature is definitely rising out here in the Lafayette Park. And just a reminder that we're about half an hour away before D.C. has ordered a curfew, and anyone would be arrested if they're still in the streets in half an hour's time. Wolf.
Yeah, let's just take a look back, and there you see police on horseback as well. This is America.
They've created a lineup
2020 right now. We're still in the midst of a coronavirus pandemic that has already taken the lives of more than 100,000 Americans, and we've seen 40 million Americans lose their jobs over the past 10 weeks alone. And now this, you see more military personnel and Secret Service personnel moving closer and closer towards the protesters in Lafayette Park right now. And as Alex Marquardt was just reporting, an additional 600 to 800 National Guard members from 5 states have now been requested to supplement the D.C. National Guard, responding to what's going on. In an official statement, a defense official calls this civil unrest. I'll read the quote from a Defense Department official. This evening, the Department of Defense has been working with the Department of Justice and other officials and the city of Washington, D.C. to provide sufficient forces for protecting the city and maintaining peace this evening. The stated goal is to help the city with their needs. As we've reported before, the entire D.C. National Guard, that's about 1,200 military personnel, the entire D.C. National Guard has been activated already. The additional
a global pandemic, 2 mass groups of people, SMH.
Yeah, there's going to be a huge spike of cases in the U.S. due to this.
Now are moving. They are backing up. This is in Washington,
Things are getting serious.
As the military personnel get closer and closer, this is potentially going to get very, very ugly. Even as the President of the United States is getting ready to deliver what he describes as a brief statement on all of this that's unfolding.
The line between the protesters and police near the White House is starting to get a little volatile.
Right now, truly stunning images.
They're all...
Protesters have their hands up. And all of a sudden, you see the military police, the Secret Service personnel, uniformed Secret Service personnel, and others moving closer and closer to them. Clearly, they're anxious to try to disperse these demonstrators. These demonstrators don't want to leave. They've been very, very peaceful.
There has been UK protests as well.
Yes, but it's been very, very peaceful. And
yeah,
now
let me go to that, actually.
Military personnel, the other police officers getting closer and closer. This is a standoff that could explode even as we await. Momentarily, we're told the President of the United States to walk into the Rose Garden and deliver a statement. Don Lemon, what do you think?
Well, I think there was a reason. Again, as I said, the attorney.
Yeah, protests for George Floyd also took place outside the U.S. in cities including Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Berlin, London, Copenhagen, and Auckland.
With the protesters. So let's see how this plays out. And the president coming out again, all of this sort of a made-for-TV moment as the president comes out and probably going to deliver a law and order type speech. But listen, Van mentioned 1992 earlier, and yes, those were horrific.
Peaceful, which is good.
Protests in the United
States.
But mainly,
it's getting a little
at
bit
Albino Batman 88 MTFC is now following.
Yes, there were
Thank you, man, for following. Much appreciated.
In cities around the country, but they did not last for 7 days. This has lasted for 7 days in major cities, most every major city around the country, and it has no signs of slowing down. 1992 with Rodney King was mostly confined to Los Angeles. A lot of people died. 63 people died. About 2,300 people were injured. 12,000 people arrested. $1 billion.
Hello, I'm from UK.
Mostly confined.
Hello, Albino. How are you? Welcome to the stream.
This has been.
Police are now running into protesters.
In the country and building. Wolf, you got people.
All right, take a look down. Hold on.
Talk about now.
There's tear gas.
At Clouds is now following.
Tear gas is now being deployed.
They're trying to disperse.
Thank you, love, for following.
At Lafayette Park, clearly they don't want these protesters to be there, even though they were peaceful. They were just screaming a little bit, but they were not endangering anyone. And all of a sudden, tear gas and these protesters now, they're going to presumably run away and try to regroup elsewhere. But this is clearly a very, very dangerous situation, and it's unfolding as we await the President of the United States to make a statement from the Rose Garden on all of this that has unfolded over the past week.
Chumpers is now following.
The killing of George Floyd, 46
Thank you,
years
Troll.
old, in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah, tear gas is over the place now.
It's deteriorating quickly right now, and I can't stress, this is right across the street from the White House, off of Pennsylvania Avenue. The north lawn of the White House is right behind Lafayette Park, where these protesters had gathered, once again, very peacefully.
Yeah, I haven't seen any indication that the protesters were being violent. It's the police that moved in on them.
Trying to disperse this crowd, and it's turning very nasty right there. Jim Acosta, you're there in the Rose Garden. Can you hear the flashbangs going on?
We sure can, yes. Well, we are standing in the Rose Garden right now waiting for the president to come out and address the nation. And as he is about to address the nation, we can hear the explosions from Lafayette Park. They're very clearly audible. And so we are now seeing the potential.
There we go. This is coming in from the US Today live stream.
As these
That's what I'm seeing right now on CNN.
At the same time. I mean, that is just an absolutely unbelievable prospect.
Now they're showing live pictures of a woman confronting 4 police officers.
Couple of days, breaking out right now. Now, we do expect the president to deliver a law and order focused address. The teleprompters are set up, and so we'll be seeing, as it's described from time to time, teleprompter Trump. That potentially means he won't be taking any questions, but as you know, expect the unexpected with the president. He may deliver these remarks and then decide to take questions. But my sense of it is, Wolf, is that he's going to be explaining why we saw those military vehicles transporting those troops over to the park to try to help quell this disturbance.
At Thick Seal 2904 is now following.
Thank you, Thick, for following me.
Walks out of here if he doesn't take any questions. You know, where is the message of calm? Where is the message of trying to calm things down around this country? Because obviously you can send in the cavalry, you can send in all of these military forces. That doesn't necessarily make the protesters go away unless you want to really crack some skulls out there. And those are images that this White House has to realize comes with a massive.
There's live pictures of a woman putting in water in a man's face. And also on her face too.
Says he's going to come into the Rose Garden and deliver a speech. All of a sudden, the military police, the Secret Service police.
Are you going to keep this going?
Yeah, for a few hours at least. Yeah, on the left of your screen, you can see what happened there here.
Right across the street. In the Rose Garden at the White House, is that appropriate?
Until it's over.
This violence now.
Probably not until this is over, because this is going to go way into the night, and I have a job to get to.
That's right, Wolf. And we just heard 3 more explosions, and I can tell you, Wolf, when that tear gas is fired out on the street near the White House, you can smell it down the block. It is not something that you just have to be in that same vicinity in order to experience that. And I think it does beg the question, why is the president delivering this address to the nation in the Rose Garden, where clearly we're going to hear these explosions, and there is the potential that you could have tear gas fumes blowing over here in the breeze. I mean, there is the potential for that. Absolutely. It makes more sense, it seems to me, for the president to be delivering this address inside the White House, in the East Room or in the Oval Office, or even in the White House briefing room.
This will not be over till.
I think there is an element of risk to it.
I mean, the Ferguson protests, when I watched them, never even gone on this long.
And you can see the protesters, a lot of them have left Lafayette Park.
No as in like daily updates.
On 16th Street, if you know Washington, D.C., and I Street, there's a lot
No, I'll do live streams time to time, because this is very important to me. Protesters are now throwing back some of the tear gas bombs at police.
From the tear gas that police have dispersed. Right moments before, supposedly the president was going to walk into the Rose Garden right across Pennsylvania Avenue from where all of this is unfolding to deliver what the president describes as a brief statement on the national unrest. That big building at the AFL-CIO right over there, if you know Washington, D.C. This is an ugly situation that has developed, not because the protesters were doing anything other than screaming a little bit and standing there, and the police coming in to try to disperse them. Alex Marquardt, you're there on the scene, and I guess you're right in the middle of this. Tell us what you're seeing and hearing. We see you have a gas mask on.
Yeah, well, the police have clearly made the
This will go for a week to come.
This is right before this curfew went into effect. Is going to go into effect at 7 p.m. And of course, right before the president is due to make these remarks to the country, remarks that many have been waiting for him to talk about all these nationwide protests. Well, just to give you a sense of things, the police have completely hemmed in the protesters, trying to push them out via 8th Street. All along the park there, we have D.C. National Guard along with park police. Protesters here with their hands up saying, "Don't shoot," because the police have been firing rounds of tear gas. That's why I have this gas mask on. The air is heavy with that tear gas, and if you look at the eyes of many of these protesters, they're red and they're full of tears. So what we've been seeing is the police moving forward at different moments to push people away from the park. So that is presumably their next move. We have this row of U.S. Park Police right here. Right behind them, another row of mounted U.S. Park Police. And so at this point, these protesters are resisting, and here come the mounted police.
That's let's listen and
more
watch
tear
for a
gas.
second. Hold on for a moment, Alex.
And protesters are now starting to run away after having to stand off because of more tear gas being deployed. Police are now moving in with their horses.
Where are you from in the US?
Oh, I live in Canada. That's not to say that there haven't been protests here.
In DC.
Yeah, pretty much. I can see graffiti that says fuck Trump. Ah, that guy just said we're doing nothing.
You can see the mounted police, they're moving in, tear gas, rubber bullets. They're trying to disperse this crowd that had gathered very peacefully, and then all of a sudden, the police start moving in to try to disperse the crowd, and it's getting very, very ugly. Once again, for viewers who may just be tuning in, this is happening as we're awaiting the President of the United States. He's supposedly going to be delivering a brief statement in the Rose Garden where you can clearly smell the tear gas that has enveloped not just Lafayette Park, but the north lawn of the White House and heading towards
Is
the
wine the
Rose
looting
Garden, where
starts?
the President is going to be speaking momentarily. Don Lemon, I'm anxious to get your thoughts right now. This is not pleasant to even observe this right here in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, as this is unfolding.
Well, Wolf, I have very quickly, all I have to say, I said earlier, this is a made-for-TV moment. This was a very peaceful protest.
Oh, here comes the president.
Hold on, Don. Here's the president. Hold on, Don.
Why are we interested in him?
Americans, my first and highest duty as president is to defend our great country and the American people. I swore an oath to uphold the laws of our nation, and that is exactly what I will do. All Americans were rightly sickened and revolted by the brutal death of George Floyd. My administration is fully
I can hear
committed
tear gas.
that for George and his family, justice will be served. He will not have died in vain. But we cannot allow the righteous cries of peaceful protesters to be drowned out by an angry mob. The biggest victims of
Can
the
you turn it up,
rioting are
PLS?
peace-loving citizens in our poorest communities. And as their president, I will fight to keep them
It's as loud as I
safe.
can get it.
I will fight to protect you. I am your president of law and order and an ally of all peaceful protesters.
Oh,
But
right.
in recent
Yeah,
days,
right.
our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals,
Police are
rioters,
pulling back
and
protesters again. They're
and
pushing them back.
a number of state and local governments have failed to take necessary action to safeguard their residents. Innocent people have been savagely beaten, like the young man in Dallas, Texas, who was left dying on the street, or the woman in upstate New York viciously attacked by dangerous thugs. Small business owners have seen their dreams utterly destroyed. New York's finest have been hit in the face with bricks. Brave nurses who have battled the virus are afraid to leave their homes. A police precinct has been overrun. Here in the nation's capital, the Lincoln Memorial
Thugs. Nice.
and the World War II Memorial have been vandalized. One of our most historic churches was set ablaze. A federal officer in California, an African-American enforcement hero, was shot and killed.
Fuck Donald Trump.
These are not acts of peaceful protest. These are acts of domestic terror. The destruction
What about
of
all the
innocent
police
lives
that have been
and the
engaging in
spilling of
police
innocent
brutality?
blood is an
Numerous
offense to
videos
humanity
that came out in
and
one
a
day,
crime against God.
and he's not mentioning any of
America
that.
needs creation, not destruction. Cooperation,
He's still
not
playing
contempt.
politics into this, and it's absolute
Security,
disgrace.
not anarchy. Healing, not hatred. Justice, not chaos. This is our mission, and we will succeed. 100%, we will succeed. Our country always wins. That is why I am taking immediate presidential action
presidential.
To stop the violence and restore security and safety in America. I am mobilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights. Therefore, the following measures are going into effect immediately. First, we are ending the riots and lawlessness that has spread throughout our country. We will end it now. Today, I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. Mayors and governors must establish an overwhelming law enforcement presence until the violence has been quelled. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them. I am also taking swift and decisive action to protect
more
our
tear
great
gas have been
capital,
exploded.
Washington, D.C. What happened in this city last night was a total disgrace. As we speak, I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, and law enforcement officers to stop the rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and the wanton destruction of property. We are putting everybody on warning. Our 7 o'clock curfew will be strictly enforced. Those who threaten innocent life and property will be arrested, detained, and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I want the organizers of this
Pete is a donkey.
to be on notice that you will face severe criminal penalties.
He can't fix the problem himself, so he's just letting the military do it. That's sad.
This includes Antifa and others who are leading instigators of this violence. One law and order, and that is what it is. One law. We have one beautiful law. And once that is restored and fully restored, we will help you, we will help your business, and we will help your family. America is founded upon the rule of law. It is the foundation of our prosperity, our freedom.
He's definitely reading this all this through a teleprompter. There's no way he can remember all that.
There is no opportunity.
I wouldn't be surprised he doesn't take questions from reporters.
There is no liberty. Where there is no safety, there is no future. We must never give in to anger or hatred. If malice or violence reigns, then none of us is free. I take these actions today with firm resolve and with a true and passionate love for our country. By far, our greatest days lie ahead. Thank you very much, and now I'm going to pay my respects to a very, very special place. Thank you very much.
So there's the
His
President
Twitter
of the
account.
United States, making a 6 or 7 minute statement declaring he is the president of law and order, and he will stop what's going on right now. And as he was speaking, right across the street from the White House, there was a peaceful demonstration in Lafayette Park by protesters who were simply shouting, making statements, but they were not threatening anyone. And all of a sudden, military personnel, military police, uniformed Secret Service police, mounted police went in to disperse, and they were firing tear gas in the process. Rubber bullets were told as well.
They weren't doing anything, and yet the
he's going to
police.
use an old law to deploy military personnel to deal with all of this. He says these are professional anarchists who are responsible. Once again, as he has for the past several days, he blamed a far-left group, Antifa, for this. They will lose.
It go through the night.
Win. He said, this is our mission. We will succeed. He said 100%. Mobilizing all resources, he said, citing an old law, civilian and military, the Insurrection Act of 1807. He says he was mobilizing that to deal with the riots, he said, and the lawlessness. This situation is about to get clearly a whole lot worse. Not only here at the White House in Washington, D.C., but I'm bracing for angry reaction in other major cities around the United States as well. And remember, in only about 8 minutes, there's supposed to be a curfew that's taking place here in the nation's capital. Everybody's supposed to be off the streets. We'll see what happens at that moment. Don Lemon, the president, did not mince from his perspective any words at all.
He did not, Wolf, and just as the president was coming out, I was trying to make the point to you that this was a made-for-TV moment. This is the reason, as I said earlier, that the Attorney General came out to survey the troops, because they wanted to create this moment for the cameras, so that when the president came out and gave his law and order speech, which I said as well, again, for the cameras, that there would be chaos on the streets of America. This was a made-for-television moment. And what I wanted to say after that, which I believe to be true, and I know to be true now, is that earlier on that phone call that we heard that Jim Acosta played for us earlier, when the president said,
Trump 2020.
You have to show strength, that the Minneapolis Police Department was on fire. I've never seen anything like this before. I said he sounded weak and scared. Those were the orders from the commander-in-chief for this very moment that just happened in front of our eyes. Why were we pretending otherwise? Open your eyes, America. Open your eyes. We are teetering on a dictatorship.
LOL.
This is chaos. Has the president, I'm listening, is the president declaring war on Americans? What is happening here? He's saying he wants to protect, he wants to protect peaceful protesters at the same time, sending law enforcement and military into the streets to push peaceful protesters back, to be aggressive with
they didn't do anything at all. It was on live television.
The exact opposite of what he said in that speech. I think the president is playing a very, very dangerous game here. There are a lot of Americans who are out on these streets who are upset, who are frustrated, who are angry. Again, I am not condoning violence at all, and I hope that they remain peaceful, but I hope that they stand up and fight for their rights to peacefully protest in this country. But he's playing a very dangerous game, because this will backfire.
Decking war on America will woe to cunt.
Angry. These people, as I have been saying as well, they feel like they are occupied in their own communities.
Fake news. Wow.
Many of them militarized police departments. Now the entire country, according to his orders, we are living under a militarized country,
I'm out.
or we will be soon, and it will play out in front of our very eyes on national television.
And the president said he is now going to be deploying what he described as thousands and thousands of U.S. military troops to American cities. He says he has the right to do so under the Insurrection Act of 1807, and that's why he's doing this. Jim Acosta, you were there, you were listening to the president, he made a 6 or 7 minute statement.
It will make it worse.
Answer reporters' questions.
He doesn't know how to calm things down. How far is this going to go?
Law and order president, he said, and he called what he called the terrorists, and he called them the terrorists, they will lose, and he complained that so many of these cities and states were engaging in a total disgrace by not taking decisive military action.
That's right, Wolf. And I just want to catch you up to speed on something that appears to be happening right now, and that is, it seems that they're making preparations over here at the White House for the president to make some kind of movement off the grounds of the White House. You heard the president say at the very end of his remarks,
for real?
Pay his respects. You can see behind me, the pool is gathering as we speak. That's the White House pool. That's the small group of reporters who trail the president throughout his day on his movements. We're not in the pool today, but our colleagues at the other network, NBC, and other print reporters, they are gathering up right now for what appears to be a very brief movement that the president is going to be taking here in just a few moments. It is possible, based on the logistics of where we are and how he'll be able to make a brief trip here in just a few moments, that he may be going to St. John's Episcopal Church. If you look at this camera that is overlooking St. John's Episcopal Church, across from Lafayette, across from the White House.
We're looking at live
Trump tries to solve protests with violence.
Right across from Lafayette Park, right over there on 16th Street. And it's as you know, Jim, every American president, I think almost every American president, has gone to Sunday services there. There was a fire that was unloaded in the basement of that church yesterday, a small fire, but right now, you can, if the president is in fact planning on heading there, we would now understand why the military police and the Secret Service decided to use tear gas and other weapons to go in and disperse that peaceful crowd that had gathered there. And Jim, I just want to read what the Insurrection
So
Act
that's the
of
only reason
1807
why.
says, because
It's
this is what
douchey.
the president says. He has the right to use to deploy what he calls thousands and thousands of military troops here domestically in the United States. I'll read the act. The Insurrection Act of 1807 is a United States federal law that governs the ability of the President of the United States to deploy military troops within the United States to suppress civil disorder, insurrection, and rebellion. That's the law the President is citing. That's why you're seeing these military police on the streets right near the White House, right over at Lafayette Park, having dispersed this crowd, and maybe the president is planning on heading over there. Go ahead, Jim.
That's what it sounds like, Wolf, but you know, you just read the 1807 Insurrection Act, which authorizes the use of military forces to quell a disturbance. However, this appears to have been a use of military forces and these other protective services to clear out the area for a photo opportunity. If the president is going to St. John's Episcopal Church for a photo opportunity,
And we're told he is. We are now hearing, Jim, that that's where the president is going, and that's why the police decided to clear out this area. The president wants to have a photo op over at the church.
that's an extraordinary use of manpower for a photo opportunity, Wolf, because
All for that.
as we've all been seeing over the last couple of days, these protests that are gathered at the
What
top of
in the
Lafayette Park,
world?
which is just across the street from the St. John's Episcopal Church.
He cleared out all those people just to have a picture taken. What the hell?
It was a very large crowd demonstrating against what we've been seeing over the last couple of days, and the death, of course, of George Floyd. But Wolf, using the 1807 Insurrection Act for this purpose, that's one thing for calming things down, getting things under control. That's controversial enough. But to use this law and invoking that law to clear out the park so the president can go to the church, that is just extraordinary, Wolf.
So we were wondering why the Attorney General of the United States had walked over behind the troops, the police, to, as they were getting ready to disperse the crowd, peaceful protesters in Lafayette Park. Now we know the president is going to have a photo op over at this St. John's Church right across the street from the White House. Our
He has
special
no
live
class.
coverage continues here on CNN with Aaron Burnett on.
Good evening, I'm Aaron Burnett. This is the breaking
Oops.
news coverage continue. As you see, violence rocking Washington is just steps from the White House. You're looking at St. John's Episcopal Church right now. This is a live picture. The president is anticipated, part of a photo op he wants to do, to be walking over there in just a couple of moments. Just moments ago, you saw while watching Wolf, police fired tear gas on protesters, rubber bullets. You could hear that. You could hear that actually in the Rose Garden, where the president then went and gave his brief comments. Military police are now on the scene surrounding parts of the White House. And this unrest is taking place even though a curfew, as I speak, is now 45 seconds into effect, starting at 7 p.m. The chaos taking place at the same time, as I said, the president was just speaking. He said about himself, "I am your president of law and order," saying he will deploy the military, the United States military, on domestic shores to control the protests if state governors do not activate the National Guard. Basically saying that he is going to go ahead with an act back from 1807.
He walking to the church, what a cunt.
Mobilizing U.S. military troops on American soil for the first time since 1807. This is how he chose to address the violence and protests that have wrapped Minneapolis, Washington, and other cities after the death of George Floyd just 1 week ago. I want to go straight to Alex Marquardt, who is out up front live right there in Washington. Obviously, Alex, you've got some places still marching.
So shameless.
They forcibly cleared that area by the church. The curfew in effect. People are still out. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, Aaron, I can't overstate what a dramatic moment we just witnessed and experienced. If the president was looking for a made-for-TV moment, he certainly got it. Moments before he took the microphone, you had this whole massive set of federal officers, U.S. Park Police combined with D.C. National Guard, who started pushing protesters out of the park. As the president was speaking, they were using horses, they were firing tear gas, they were firing pepper spray rounds, as well as
911.
This is at least part of the protest that was out in front of the White House. And I gotta tell you,
now he's walking down now.
Now, it is important to note there is a difference between federal law enforcement and local law enforcement. That Lafayette Park, right in front of the White House, that is federal land. It is controlled by federal law.
Now he's walking down to the church.
And they have been the ones who are pushing these protesters out. There is now a curfew, as you mentioned, but there's a whole series of deeply disturbing scenes as we're
Alright, you can hear Alex as we get his audio back, everyone. This is what you're seeing. You're seeing President Trump now walk across the street from the White House, going to St. John's Episcopal
It'd be like sending lamb to suitor if they smell LOL.
Their tear gas, rubber bullets. You heard the explosions. All of this to clear the space for the president to go across the street to St. John's Episcopal Church. I want to emphasize that the protesters who were outside the White House were peaceful. There had been nothing violent at all about what they were doing. So this use of force that they just did to clear this space was not forced to stop violence. It was forced to stop peaceful protesters.
Thank you, Lois, for the sparks,
protesting as they were allowed to do.
The alert box
that is very important here to emphasize. Now on your screen you see the president obviously from the White House on one side. You see protests in other parts of Washington, D.C. on the other, just a block or so away. The curfew did just take place at 7 o'clock, and obviously it is not being adhered to.
Oh yeah, the curfew just went into effect for Washington, D.C.
Protesters. I want to go to Caitlin Collins overlooking the church where the president is headed now. So Caitlin, what have you been able to see here?
Yeah, Aaron, well, this is really notable because we've been up here, we saw these protesters moved so quickly out of this park here. I mean, it was maybe minutes. They gave 3 warnings. Those warnings came within minutes of one another, and then you started seeing these officers who have been standing in the park all day start to move in on these protesters, and then they started to move them down the street, and there were several lines of officers, Aaron, some on horse, some on foot. They had batons, shields, tear gas, and flashbangs, and they moved these protesters, almost all of them, out of in front of the White House within 10 minutes. They raised questions of whether or not they were doing that because the president was out to speak in the Rose Garden, and now we're learning it's because the president wanted to come over to this church right here that is behind me. I'm going to step to the side so you can see St. John's Church right here. This is what part of it caught on fire last night, though the rector said today it could have been much worse than the damage they actually fared. You can't see a ton of damage from the front, though the back we are told the back side of it was on fire, but it's notable that the president is coming over here after they just moved all of these peaceful protesters out of the way. They had been chanting.
This is Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks retweeting Cristobal saying the president is declaring war on American citizens.
The Secret Service just came up here where we are.
I think that would be good.
You can see the Secret Service is up here on the roof with us now of the Hay Adams Hotel. This is where we've been brought. Walked over from the White House to St. John's before. The last time he came here, he was in a motorcade, and now you can see a ton of Secret Service and aides walking through the park as the president is making his way over to visit this church that was part of the fires last night.
All right, Caitlin, so, please stay with us here as we watch this, and everyone, you can see here the camera's trying to catch up, the president doing this unprecedented moment in so many respects, breaking up peaceful protesters with flashbangs and rubber bullets, saying that he is going to invoke for the first time in more than 200 years an act allowing U.S. military deployment on U.S. shores.
This is completely unnecessary.
Against Americans. You see the president walking there. Jeffrey Toobin is with me on the phone. So Jeff, obviously you see the president walking across the St. John's Episcopal Church. All of this massive security presence around him. This is an unprecedented moment.
It certainly is, and I think it's important when we talk about the president's authority to draw a distinction here. The president basically has carte blanche to bring the military into the District of Columbia. The law, the District of Columbia is not a state, and the president can bring in the military if he likes. It's a very different story in the 50 states. The act he's talking about, it has the name, the very evocative name of the Insurrection Act of 1807, and it says the president can bring in the military. However, it says it must be at the request of a state government. So I don't know exactly what their justification is if they think they can just send the military in to a state, because that is not prohibited, it is not allowed. It's well established. There's another similarly old law called the Posse Comitatus Act, which says that the American military cannot be involved in law enforcement. The Insurrection Act is a kind of exception to that, but it is only at the request of a state government. And as far as I'm aware, no states, including, of course, Minnesota, have asked for the military to come in. So we'll have to see how that develops.
To your point, Jeffrey, and you just explained it so perfectly, it does explain his phrasing, right? He brought them into Washington. Looks like he may be about to speak here.
Now he's posing for a picture.
He did say that every governor must deploy their full National Guard, and if they don't, he will deploy the U.S. military and quickly solve the problem for them. That's what he said. Now he's standing there.
And he'll leave the front lines defenseless. I don't know if that would be the case, but it sounds like to me. I mean, the military is supposed to be defending the U.S. borders. Or whatever. You know.
Holding up a Bible.
We have a great country. That's my thoughts. This country is great. It won't take long. It's not going to take long. You see what's going on. It's coming back. It's coming back strong. It'll be greater than ever before.
I'm Sleep 5.
Alright, Lo, thank you for joining us, sir. Ignoring reporters.
As he is there across the street, as we said, with his staff, massive security detail holding up a Bible. I'm just listening here along with everyone else, just to pause here for a moment of the president setting up this photo op for himself, dispersing peaceful protesters to do so in front of a boarded up
What
church.
a giant fucking douchebag.
Due to the protests last evening.
Look at his smug face.
You can see him standing there. I think it's important just to talk about the image. He sees this as his big photo. You saw him sort of, caring about the moment and the photo. Now bringing everybody in here for his photo op. That's what this is all about for him. Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. As he does this, and I will, Bill Barr, the Attorney General, who we saw coming in, we're going to
He's hushing a reporter.
While we do that, I'm going to bring in the Governor of Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker. Governor, you were on the phone with the President today. You had some strong words. I want to ask you about that, but first, what do you say? You just heard Jeffrey Toobin, President saying he is going to mobilize the U.S. military to go into states, deploy them quickly to solve the problem for them if they won't do it. That they are the governors. You are one of them. What do you say to the President?
Well, first of all, I reject the notion that the federal government can send troops into the state of Illinois. The fact is that the President has created an incendiary moment here. He wants to change the subject. from his failure over coronavirus, a miserable failure, and now seeing a moment when there is unrest because of the injustice that was done to George Floyd, that he now wants to create another topic and something where he can be the law and order president. He's been a miserable failure. What I talked about on the call today was the fact that his rhetoric is inflaming passions around the nation. He should be calling for calm. He should be calling for bringing the temperature down. He's doing the exact opposite.
Well, Governor, what he just did was hold up a Bible, making it clear that that's what he stands for. He's the, I mean, I don't know, what words would you put on it? He's God
stands for
behind him. He's the president of law and order and of godliness. What do you make of that very bizarre moment?
Look, he continually lies. The fact is that God is on the side of those who stand up for American values, those who stand up for freedom, those who stand up for the rights of everyone in our nation. And that means standing up for the peaceful protesters. You saw what he did to the peaceful protesters. Those were federal troops under his command. He obviously wanted them pushed back. He wanted to create a moment. He wanted tear gas in the streets in Washington, D.C., so that he could look like he needs to bring order to the nation. And the fact is that he should stay out of our business. We are working hard in the state of Illinois to bring down tensions. And look, every day he has inflamed racial tension.
Is there anything, Governor, that would, in your mind, justify what just happened, which is peaceful protesters there were rubber bullets, there was tear gas, there were flashbangs, they were moved out, right? They were peaceful. There'd been nothing indicating anything otherwise. But that is how they were moved out, so that he could walk across the street with his staff for that moment with the Bible.
It's precisely the wrong way to handle that. Peaceful protesters have a right to be there. I saw what happened. I was watching CNN when all of a sudden the troops moved forward and then they started pushing the protesters, throwing tear gas canisters. This is not the way we behave in the United States. Our law enforcement are out there on the streets trying to protect people. They're not, at least here in Chicago, we're not in the business of trying to put down peaceful protest.
Governor, tell me more about your phone call that you had with the president today.
Well, we listened for a while as the president said some, frankly, outlandish things, crazy things. He talked about dominating the streets in all of our cities today. And then, after he said all of that, there were a few governors, mostly Republican governors, who got on and said, positive, complimentary things about the president. And I couldn't believe that nobody was calling him out on his rhetoric. And so when I was called on, I just had to say what I said, expressing the values of the people of Illinois. We're a state that produced Barack Obama in the presidency. We produced Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant. We have a long history of standing up for equality and against racial injustice. And it's time that more people stood up and said something, because this president, every day, and I've said it from the beginning, the man is a racist, a misogynist, a homophobe, a xenophobe. He's got to go.
So I'm going to play, as we're watching this, your exchange with the president when you called out his rhetoric, his inflammatory rhetoric, as you called it, and what he said in response. Here it is. So, what did you want to, then tonight he comes to the Rose Garden and you heard him. He refers to it as an angry mob. He says, "I'm your president of law and order." Did anything you say in the Rose Garden show that he in any way heard what you said?
No, it's clear that he doesn't listen to anyone that tells him the truth. I did tell him the truth. You know, this rhetoric, this inflammatory rhetoric, is bad for the country. You know, when we had the riots in Ferguson, President Obama started to bring the temperature down. He talked about calling for calm. When when Martin Luther King was killed, Robert Kennedy stood up and talked about seeking justice, and bringing the tension down within the country. This president doesn't understand any of that. He probably hasn't read any of that, knows no history, and doesn't understand the job of the president to truly speak to the values of the nation.
So you said on that call, he said that you all needed to dominate the protesters. That's what he said, and that fits with what he just said here. But I just want to be clear, when he says every governor should deploy the National Guard in full, that's what he said in the Rose Garden. That's what he wants you to do. I guess the first question is, do you plan to do that, Governor Pritzker?
Well, we have called out the National Guard to be a support mechanism for our local law enforcement. And they're doing that, frankly, and they're doing a good job. We also have our state police assisting local law enforcement all across the state, wherever they have requested it. So the president just doesn't know what he's talking about. And when he says in every state, well, what if there aren't any riots in every state? What if there aren't any there isn't any violent behavior or looting? I think he just wants to create a tone in which, it's law and order versus people standing up for their rights, and he'd just as soon run over people's rights.
So, Governor, what will you do if he does, he says he's mobilizing the U.S. military, but he says that if you don't solve the problem, he will deploy the U.S. military quickly and solve the problem for you. You've categorically said you reject his ability to send U.S. military to the state of Illinois, but what will you do if he tries to move forward?
Well, it's illegal. Jeffrey Toobin just confirmed what I have known, which is it's illegal. He can't do it. We won't request military assistance here in the state of Illinois. I can't imagine any governor is going to do that. And it's ridiculous. The situation that we're in today is one which requires a leader who will stand up and meet the challenge, by the way, of addressing police accountability, making sure that we're standing up for peaceful protest. Yes, of course, we want looters to go to prison, to jail. We want to make sure that we're catching people who are lighting fires or causing any violence. But the vast majority of people who are out there in Washington, D.C. and here in Illinois are standing up for peaceful protest and standing up against what happened in Minneapolis to George Floyd.
All right, Governor Pritzker, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, sir. Don Lemon, of course, my colleague joins me on the phone along with Ben Jealous, the former president of the NAACP. Don, to the point that the governor was making, the president wanted this photo up and he wanted to disperse that crowd because he is, he wants an image of all of these protests being one thing, which is violent, which of course is not accurate.
Yes, and listen, we work in television. We know it's someone is producing a moment, and we know this president comes from a reality show background. And the fact that he says that he is going to protect protesters, peaceful protesters, and then sends in military or police officers to push them away when they're being peaceful, it's just really outrageous. And Aaron, we're New Yorkers. Donald Trump standing in front of a church with a Bible? Really? Let's just be honest here. When was the last time Donald Trump saw a church? Even before he was president of the United States. When was the last time he cracked open a Bible? I'm just saying, this is all for show. Donald Trump is pretending in this moment to be a president. Let's just all be real about this. He's pretending to be a president. He is mimicking the person that he adores, his hero, George Patton, and he wants to return to some sort of 1950s sort of dominance for America. That's what he's doing. This is all acting, it's all a show, and he is performing his country what he thinks a leader should be like and what he thinks a president of the United States should be like. But guess what? This is a very, very dangerous game. He is possibly igniting tension. Not possibly, he is igniting tensions, I know more. I hope this doesn't turn out to backfire on him, because if it does, it's not going to play out well for many people in the United States, beyond the President of the United States. But if it does, we will watch those images play out on our television screens, and America will see this. This is all about getting reelected in November of 2020. I'm not sure how much this is going to help the president. This may help his base, but sensible Americans will realize, and they know, America is not a dictatorship. America is not a police state. When people are crying out to be heard, when they are protesting on the street, that means they are angry, they are hurt, and they want to be heard. We have the strongest, biggest military force in the world. We have very strong, very big police forces all over the cities and municipalities in this country. We can stop rioters anytime we want. We can stop looters anytime we want. We can stop people who are breaking laws anytime we want. But what we can't figure out is how to deal with people who are hurting, Americans who are just like us, who live in the same community. It's not adjacent community. Who share the same land and the same values. We cannot figure out how to get along with them, bring them into the fold, and as the President of the United States, represent those people and engage those people without sticking the military on them, the armed forces on them. There is a problem and a lack of understanding and empathy coming from the highest office of the land. And the person who holds that office is Donald J. Trump.
Don, I'm just going to interrupt you for one moment to go to Brian Todd, who is on the ground here with what you see in Washington, 723, the curfew at 7.
The headline reads here, peaceful protesters near White House gas, shot with rubber bullets so Trump can have church photo op.
Aaron, an extraordinary development here in front of the Philadelphia police station. Just moments ago, police officers over there in a tense standoff with demonstrators took a knee in solidarity with the demonstrators. It drew cheers. It actually dispersed the crowd. It was peaceful, and it was very positive. Not 5 minutes later, they have police in tactical gear. Look over there. You've got heavily armored police in tactical gear in armored vehicles coming in here, some of them wielding tear gas guns. These police also are wielding batons and helmets, as if we do realize there's a curfew going on. We do realize that the police want to enforce the curfew. But I just think it's an extraordinary development that really only a couple minutes after police over here took a knee in solidarity with the protesters and drew cheers and gratitude from the protesters, then they move in with this show of force. You wonder what message the police want to send here, and now it's very silent, but it's very, very tense. We don't really know what's going to happen. The protesters are simply standing here, silent, holding up signs. They're not taunting at the moment. They're not provoking. We have to see what the police want to do, Aaron, but it's just an extraordinary development here. I mean, it literally was maybe 5 minutes after police took a knee and drew some very positive cheers from the crowd that this happens.
And so now, Brian, it's just a matter of who bends at this point.
It really is. And you know what? These situations often don't end well. If it remains like this, and who knows how long it's going to remain like this, somebody probably will, start something or make a movement. It could be the littlest thing. We've seen that before. But the police have already, I have to say, they've already acted very aggressively tonight. We were there at an overpass at 676 when protesters went onto the highway. Police fired tear gas down onto them from an elevated position when protesters were on a highway under an overpass. They were all packed in there. They were trying to just get through the overpass and possibly get down the highway. They were blocking the highway, but the pattern is in these things, often when they go onto highways, they exit them pretty quickly. So the police, though, decided to fire tear gas at that moment, and it became a complete chaotic melee. Some people were hurt. We were tear gassed. Everybody it was a stampede out of there. There were people injured. The police did act very aggressively. The question is now, Aaron, are they going to act aggressively here and pretty much destroy a positive moment that happened about 10 minutes ago?
I think that's so important what you say. That positive moment with some of the police getting on a knee, taking the knee, showing their solidarity in such a peaceful way, and then now you have this standoff and these moments that somebody's got to give. So as we watch this here with you, Brian, and we're going to be keeping you up, keeping your shot up here. The other side of your screen, everyone, you see Washington, D.C. The curfew there was 7 o'clock. It's now 7:27 Eastern Standard Time. You have a protester there, that line of police. There are obviously protesters still around. Okay, thank you, Brian. So you can see his shot there as we see what happens. So you've got Philadelphia on one side of your screen, Washington, D.C. on the other. These images are stunning, I think, for all Americans to look at, to think that this is our country. Jeffrey Toobin was explaining, you do have the mobilization of the U.S. military in Washington, D.C., which the president has the right to do. It is not a state.
Hi. Hope you are doing good.
Hey, DJ Skype, how are ya? Welcome to the stream. I'm just having special coverage of the chaos in America. Such a stupid scene a few moments ago. Peaceful protesters near the White House gassed, shot with rubber bullets, so Trump can have a church photo op. It was at a church that was burned, partly burned, last night during protests.
Now, Governor, what do you say to the president? He'll deploy the U.S. military. He will solve the problem for you if you don't do it.
I say thank you, but no thank you.
It's crazy here.
How are you tonight?
You are where again?
Look,
I'm in Canada. Where do you live?
Reality here, right? Even the pictures from Washington, D.C. You had a number of protesters. They were peaceful protesters. They were young people, largely white crowd in Washington, D.C., who are offended at what they saw with
What was the question?
Murder.
Where do you live?
Should be. It's actually a beautiful thing that you have people all across this nation saying enough is enough after what happened to Mr. Floyd. So that's actually a positive. Now, do you have in these situations people who exploit the moment and people who have criminal activity and looting and extremist groups that pose anarchy? Yes. But the protesters themselves have been making a very valid point. Wake up, America. We're killing people based on the color of their skin. And it is a real issue. The president wants to make it a reality TV show of God and country.
I'm in San Francisco. Sorry my stream cut out.
No worries.
Yeah, we understand who he's
Protests going on in Philadelphia.
And the base he's trying to rally with the military and believe in God and I hold the Bible. But that's not what's happening in this country today.
So, Governor, what are you, the scenes we see in Washington and Philadelphia right now, of course, there's decisions to be made in terms of enforcing these curfews and what police are going to do. You have a curfew of 11 o'clock tonight in New York, in New York City. How strictly will you enforce it?
Yeah, it's just a sad moment. Such a sad moment for the U.S.
The peaceful protesters, which are the overwhelming majority, from people who are looking to exploit the moment by looting, etc. New York City, they looted high-end stores with high-end merchandise. That wasn't a coincidence. There are people who knew what they were doing. If you wanted to commit a crime, Aaron, that was the time and the night to do it.
By the way, DJ Skype, I believe I'll be starting a new Legend of Dragoon stream for when Psychronix's new Dragoon modifier will come out. They'll fully have the no dart feature completely out of the beta, working properly and whatnot, and yeah, I'll be starting a new playthrough just using that feature exclusively.
I'm old enough to remember.
I've been streaming for about a month because I have a friend here, and it'll be nice to get back into some games.
And I lived through Amadou Diallo in New York City, and Abner Louima, and Eric Garner. How many people have to die? And the names change, but the color stays the same. And it's right that enough is enough. And let's take this moment and actually change.
So Governor, the president tonight, you've mentioned these extremist parts, which we all know are part of this. The president specifically in the Rose Garden said they're professional anarchists, rioters, Antifa, he mentioned specifically. Would you agree with how he characterized it? And how big are these elements in what you're seeing in New York?
Look, you have extremist groups on the left and on the right in this country, and everyone knows that. They are the small minority in what's going on, but they are self-destructive. The looting, the criminal activity is intolerable. And when, from a law enforcement point of view, you need to weed them out, but they are intermingled with the protesters. But what the president today did was he called out the American military against American citizens. That's what they did. They used the American military.
Whole bunch of police cars parked on the streets in Los Angeles.
Protest, which everyone watched on TV, just so he could have a photo op of walking to a church. When was the last time you saw the American military called out against Americans? Is that
1807?
Yeah. Is that Americana?
1807.
Making America great? I don't think so.
That's over 200 years ago.
So you saw the moment tonight, Governor, with the president, obviously because he wanted to have that picture in front of St. John's Episcopal Church with the Bible. They forcibly cleared the protesters who were there. As you point out, those protesters were peaceful. They were by and large young. They were by and large white. They were cleared out with rubber bullets, tear gas, flashbangs, and he went and held up the Bible. What was your reaction when you saw him do that? When you saw him stop and pause and hold up that Bible?
I've seen a lot of things, but I was shocked at what they did. I was shocked at the force they used to move the protesters, who could not have been more peaceful. From their signs, they were all there to make the legitimate point about the killing of Mr. Floyd. And it was just for a photo opportunity. I mean, it is amazing. Calling out the American military for a photo opportunity. That's what it was. I mean, it was shameful. It was really, truly shameful.
Governor, before we go, were you on that call today with the president where you spoke to the governors? And if so, what can you tell us about it?
I was on for part of it. It is as you reported. The president takes every situation and puts it through his public relations lens. He wants to make this about looting because he doesn't want to talk about the killing of Mr. Floyd. He doesn't want to talk about that.
Sounds about right.
And he doesn't want to really talk about racism and discrimination. So he wants to make it about looting. And his answer is always the same. Dominate. Use the military to dominate. That's not what this nation needs. This is actually, these protesters are making a legitimate, inarguable point. How do you kill Mr. Floyd with a video cameras running? How do you do that? And this is who we are, and how do we get better? This a historic problem of racism and discrimination and inequality and injustice, and they want this country to be better, and the country should be better. But rather than the truth, Mr. Trump wants to create his own truth, that these are bad people and looters and thugs and they have to be put down. But the American people saw the video. Those were not thugs and looters. These are young people who still have idealism and want to make this nation better. And that's a good instinct, and it should be encouraged.
All right, well, Governor Cuomo, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Let everyone watch here for a moment. This is Washington, D.C.
Put on there, brother. Yo, you're a grown man. You're a grown man just like you. No, you're a grown man. You're a grown man just like you.
You're serving the country, right?
And you're cool. In the back, old hand. Tripping, man. You're right at 60. What did you have? Whatever. And you laugh.
So this is a tense moment unfolding in Washington. We are seeing others like it in Philadelphia, where our Brian Todd is. Curfew is 7 o'clock Eastern in Washington. We also were showing you moments ago pictures of child protesters in Dallas. These are the tense moments that you're seeing, in part because of these curfews. This is Dallas, and you can look in the middle of your screen. You can see those protesters coming through right in the center at 6:36 p.m. Central Time, of course, in Dallas. as we continue to watch these images across this country on a night where the president has said he will mobilize the United States military for action on U.S. shores using an act from 1807, the Insurrection Act, to deter two governors, saying they categorically refuse his right to do so.
Jesus
to
Christ.
Deploy U.S. military troops to U.S. states. He does have the right to do it in the District of Columbia, and he did it there tonight. I want to bring in now, as we watch these again, I apologize in advance to you, Vangelis, if I interrupt you, as we watch these images. Vangelis, the former president and CEO of the NAACP, joins me along with our own Dana Bash. Ben, let me just ask you first what you made of the moment there, the president walking across the street after forcibly clearing peaceful protesters and holding up a Bible in front of the church after saying, "I am your president of law and order."
So it's really quite, what we're looking at is a president who really has no moral authority, but certainly most of this country's young people, and probably most of the country is. And so he's grasping onto every bit of positional authority, and then to use the U.S. military against peaceful protesters for a photo op, it's probably for his campaign, is deeply disturbing on every level. One thing, I want to go back to what I said earlier about it being a law and order president. That, of course, comes from Richard Nixon, his 1968 campaign. The difference between Nixon and Trump is that Nixon incredibly convinced people in the suburbs that he could keep them safe. And I really think that Trump has had a very hard time in most suburbs in this country convincing people that he's capable of anything other than creating change.
And I think Ben points out, this was a campaign moment. That is exactly what it was.
Absolutely. And if we can just think about the imagery that the president clearly concocted from his reality TV sensibility that we have been talking about since we saw it, going over not to have any kind of empathetic moment with the protesters, any kind of connection, no inkling of an I feel your pain moment at all. Instead, it was the law and order, going over, standing in front of the church, holding a Bible, forgive me, and then asking his aides who were standing there with him, all white people, and only one woman, to stand in front of the cameras. Never mind the fact that in order to get to that point, he had to disperse the crowd. That is what happened, and that is the remarkable moment that we saw unprecedented. But again, what didn't happen is almost as important. He made a little bit of a reference to Rose Garden, to what happened to George Floyd, but no mention of what Andrew Cuomo just said, or others have been saying, because that reflects reality, which is that there are protesters out there who have very legitimate concerns and anger and despair and disgust. And the fact that he is not even trying to connect to them, and instead he sees strength and weakness and black and white, and that is it. And that is all he wants to communicate, which is why I agree with Mr. Gellis about the fact that he's obviously trying to follow the Richard Nixon re-election model, but it is a very, very different situation. And Ben, what was your reaction? The president does everything for a reason, and he's thought things through. He knew full well when he had all those people stand around him that every single one of them was white, and he was standing with a Bible, when he was talking about an issue that had to do with a black man being killed. It wasn't a mistake that happened.
No, look, it absolutely wasn't. And this president really made a name for himself in New York in politics by insisting that
This trending collapse, U.S. Senator Tom Cotton calls for the military to shoot protesters rather than arrest them.
Has freed them from prison and proven their innocence. And then he went on to attack the legitimacy of President Obama's birthright to be a citizen, who he took to be president. And so he's run on kind of racial rhetoric for a very long time, and I shows every sign that that's what he plans to do.
Right, both of you. Thank you very much.
This in world news. The UK government has urged to suspend export of tear gas, rubber bullets, and riot shields to the US. British law requires exports to be suspended if they are used for internal repression.
Wow. Saw one of them. The police did not respond. And we are also, as we said, now watching protests across this country. The curfew in Washington, D.C. among the earliest was a 7 o'clock curfew. So these people are now out in defiance of it. The police at this time are showing restraint. This comes as the family of George Floyd is releasing their autopsy report. They have determined Floyd died from asphyxia, from sustained forceful pressure, a homicide. The report comes as the county has released its formal autopsy report as well. Sarah Seidner's out front live in Minneapolis. There are two reports, both concluding that he would not have died had this not have happened.
Yeah, both concluding that George Floyd was killed, both saying that it was a homicide. The difference is exactly what killed him. The family's pathologist is saying that he died of asphyxia and that they found no apparent heart condition. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office found that actually he did have some heart issues, and that they're not exactly sure, but they certainly said that he did have some heart issues and that he died of a car mode is now on with his heart, and so these unavailable. You might want to try setting them up again. But what is consistent is actually the fact that they say, yes, he was killed. This was not an accident. This wasn't something that happened just because of a medical condition. Aren't available. I want to try setting them up again. By someone. And you know that autopsies don't say who necessarily is the person who killed him, but definitely that the person was killed. So that is very stark. That is something that, of course, the prosecutors will seize on after they have already charged one of the officers in this case. That officer, Derek Chauvin, has been arrested. He has been charged with third-degree murder.
This ends satire from On Guard for the subreddit. Antifa's surprised to discover it is an organization.
Raymond, but that got postponed to a bit later in the next week, but there are a lot of folks here that are looking at this and saying, okay, so now that you have homicide, what about those other 3 officers? Those 3 officers that were fired, they were fired by the
extraordinary.
police here for
Trending on television subreddit at 5 p.m. today. Viacom, CBS channels, NTV, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, Paramount Network, BET, Pop TV, CMTV, VH1, Logo Smithsonian, and CBS Sports sees programmed for 8 minutes and 46 seconds to protest the murder of George Floyd, instead of airing just the words, "I can't breathe."
How there can be a homicide determined by 2
absolutely incredible.
And that those 3 other officers involved are not in any way charged with any kind of criminal act.
So Sarah, when you talk to protesters there on the ground, how important are charges to them for those other officers in terms of why they're out there?
They're everything. They want to see justice. They don't just want an apology. They don't just want a firing. They want to see the same kind of justice that is meted out on people of this community if they do something, right? And so they don't feel that they're seeing an equal play here when an officer is considered to have done something criminal and when a regular citizen is considered to have done something.
This is a very volatile time in our history.
Ultimately, if this goes to a jury trial, that will be up to a jury, and that is not something that the prosecutor nor the police can have a huge impact. The jury will look at all of the evidence and decide if this goes to a jury trial. But the people here want to at least see charges. And I want to mention something else. As we were here all day, Terrence Floyd, the brother of George Floyd, one of his brothers came here for the first time and saw the place where his brother lost his life.
This in technology. Talkspace CEO says he's pulling out a 6-figure deal with Facebook and won't support a platform that incites racism, violence, and lies.
Stop it. You're not doing this in our name. We want you to peacefully protest, and we want you to do something further than that, and that is vote. Erin?
All right, Sarah, thank you very much. I want to go now to Floyd family attorney Tony Romanucci. And Tony, you know, we talk about these two reports. The medical examiner's office tonight released a report saying Floyd's death was a homicide resulting from being restrained. It lists the cause of death as cardiopulmonary arrest, complicating law enforcement subdual, restraint, and neck compression. They go on to say Floyd died from experiencing a cardiopulmonary arrest while being restrained by law enforcement officers. Does that match up, their words, with what you found?
Well, thank you, Aaron. And on behalf of the Benjamin Crump legal team and myself, we want to just express how upset we are with what's happening out there. We endorse the peaceful protests. However, what happened to George Floyd was nothing short of murder. And what you see with what the Hennepin County Medical Examiner released after our press conference, why wasn't this done earlier? Why weren't the citizens given the opportunity to comment on this earlier? Our press conference today,
the state of America right now,
peaceful protest, and indeed you see what happens. Action takes place. Now, their finding was homicide. Our findings were homicide, death by the hand of another. When you look at the subtleties of what they found, cardiopulmonary arrest as a result of neck compression.
I think I'm gonna end it here off for now. Streaming live today for 2 minutes and 1 second. I want to thank you all for. I want to thank my viewers on Mixer and YouTube. Thank you, DJ Skype, for tuning in for what is pretty much one of the most infamous moments in American history, and something that we all have to talk about and deal with. This is important.
This man suffered for minutes and minutes while
I'll probably be back on at some point to talk further about it. For now, I'm Spire Kid. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you guys next time.
As we see on the other angle, he died.
This is CNN Breaking News.